Cavs on the Break NBA podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network, is brought to you by a presenting sponsor, Aligned Health Center. Aligned Health Center is the first chiropractic biophysics clinic in Northern Ohio. The team at Aligned Health Center helps patients with back pain, neck pain, migraines, ADHD, digestive issues, sleep disturbance, whiplash, scoliosis, and much more. And along with chiropractic biophysics, Aligned Health Center is also the leading clinic in regenerative medicine. You may have heard of it as stem cell injections. And listen, you don't have to be an NBA player to get this done or have this treatment. If you have lower back pain, shoulder pain, knee pain, arthritis, if it stops you from getting on the golf course, check out the Regenerative Medicine Clinic at Aligned Health Center. Come in for a free consultation, get some imaging done and x-rays to see how Aligned Health Center can help you. There are no multiple shots and it's complete with physical therapy built into the process, so there's no downtime. And look, it gets even better. Aligned Health Center doesn't charge people for x-rays or exams, and they don't bill you later. They let you know right up front, right away, how much it's going to cost. They are transparent. Listen, they are number one for a reason. Call Aligned Health Center today at 440-385-7357 or visit their website at alignedhealthcenters.com to make an appointment and to learn more about how Aligned Health Center can help you. Again, that's 440-385-7357 or visit alignedhealthcenters.com.
Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
That sound means it's time for a Cavs on the Break NBA podcast from the Press Play Podcast Network. I'm your host, Chase Smith, and with me, he's the editor and writer at 48minutes.com, assistant editor at Outkick.com. He is our Cavs insider, national NBA writer, Sam Amico. Sam, you are everyone's friend and favorite follow on Twitter. What has been going on the past couple weeks, man? It's Sam.
I wouldn't go
Sam,
that far. You know what, Chase? You're the only one who's told me that I'm not loved by all.
Oh, no.
I've heard rumors that I may not be, but you're the only one who came out and said, man, people are hating on you on Twitter.
Bro, I got your back, man. I got your back. So what was it, Sam, that kind of had you ruffle some feathers? You kind of played a part in a trending story that some of these Cavs players.
I honestly have no idea.
No, well, I saw a lot of a little bit about Sexton. But the one thing that really kind of set people off was you reported that you had talked to a previous Cavs player, and they said that the culture in the locker room is not a winning culture, and players know that, and that 80% of the players, Sam, would welcome a trade, and that did not make people happy. Some people didn't believe it. I believe everything you've ever said, Sam.
Well,
but why do you think that's
recorded on the Cavs where I quote somebody is what they said? And I don't know that every time somebody shares something, it's the absolute truth. But if I feel like it's coming from a good person in a good place, and that they're not totally exaggerating, I would say 80% of the locker room welcoming a trade is probably a bit on the high side, but I can't talk to guys individually this year, obviously, because of circumstances. So you don't really know. I think that there are guys who are just fine with being here.
Well, sure. They're grateful to be in the league, but
Isaac Okoro's thrilled,
I'm thrilled that Isaac Okoro is thrilled. So Sam, why did that make people so upset? What about our culture do they disagree with the statement, or do they because to me that makes sense. It checks out. We've been in the lottery. We've been just kind of like barely not drowning, trying to tread water. Like, what about this culture and this team would make people say, no, that can't be true?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where the evidence is. I think that you want to believe that everybody's happy and that everything's fine. And that you're moving in the right direction. And that's not to say that the Cavs, aren't moving in the right direction, but I think that they've got a little longer ways to go than they're trying to sell. And look, you know what, as a fan, I've been a fan, never had to cover the Cleveland Browns. So I've been able to just maintain being a fan, and that's it. And I mean, I am diehard. So I know when I see one of the Browns writers say something that is true, but I don't like, I get mad at them,
Mhm.
you know, and I'm like, well, why are you always reporting negative stuff? But in reality, this is probably the first time that in my 14 years covering the Cavs that I've felt all is not as great as the picture that they're trying to paint. And I think that I'm not saying it's terrible, but it's just not as great, and it's not going as glowingly as, I don't want to say others paint it, but maybe as a fan, you kind of look at it through those rose-colored glasses. I know I do the Browns.
Yeah.
So I understand if people are upset at things, but I also am not reporting them because I'm not reporting them because I'm digging for negative stuff. I'm just asking around.
No, I thought when I saw that tweet pretty early on, I didn't expect it to have legs as it did throughout the day and the next couple of days, Sam. I thought, yeah, that makes sense. Like 80% probably would welcome a trade is different than like wanting a trade, right? But as it got legs and people were like upset, it's not like they signed Anderson Varejao, Sam. That's not a move that's going to like cultivate a winning, like exciting culture. That's not a move you make to like.
Right. Well, one thing I'll say about that, Chase, is that players view things a lot differently than the fans do. Whereas they'll come out publicly and kind of give more of a rah-rah type of attitude. It's not necessarily the way it is all the time. And I can tell you, as a guy who's covered this team for 14 years, I started 2007 when they went to the finals, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've seen the highest of the highs. Then LeBron left, and then they went on a 26-game losing streak. So I saw the lowest of the lows, and then LeBron comes back. They start winning again. You go back up on the highs, and now back down to the lows. And I can tell you the one common denominator, and it's not just the Cavs. I talked to writers from, people who covered the Sacramento Kings, people who covered the Knicks before this year, that now that the Knicks are having some success, people who covered, teams like the Orlando Magic or the Charlotte Hornets, or teams that typically don't have much success. And this is a universal thing, Chase. Generally, there's a lot of finger pointing going on when you lose. There's a lot of, man, I'm tired of losing. I want to go play for a team that values winning. And I can tell you the one thing about playing the lottery that every fan is excited about, like Cade Cunningham or whatever. I've had players say, oh, so they want to, they're going to draft somebody who plays my position.
And yeah.
And I mean, look, a lot of these guys are 21 years old. They're on their way up. They don't want their minutes taken by some other 21-year-old or 19-year-old or whoever's drafted. So there's a lot of finger pointing going on when there's losing, and it only makes sense. Now, if they start winning games and they start really have a reason to believe that, hey, we're going to be good in a year or two. We're not going to just be, the ninth, 10th seed in the Eastern Conference. We're going to be pretty good. We're going to be a team that people can fear. When they start feeling that, those negative feelings go away. But I'm not, from the players I've talked to, either the former Cavs or people who are in touch with the Cavs on the floor. I haven't talked to any Cavs about this. I haven't had an opportunity to. It's guys that I've had their numbers for years, and they will say to me, things are not necessarily, they're in that kind of rut where the guys are kind of feeling like it's more than injuries. It's more than Sam,
that's
for the future.
That shouldn't be a surprise. That would be a surprise if you're talking about a team like the Knicks or the Heat, or a team that has either sustained success like the Heat, or success this year for the first time since God knows when with the Knicks. It shouldn't be a surprise that there's a little like disgruntledness or uneasiness or distrust or no community or camaraderie. Like that shouldn't come as a surprise to this Cavs team.
Well, you have a divide in the fan base right now. When you lose all the time, your fan base is divided. You have the hey, we're terrible, we're not going anywhere element.
It's all over Colin Sexton. And Sam, not to keep
Well, a
talking
lot
about
of
the
it
Browns,
is,
but
yeah.
when you have a quarterback controversy, you don't have a quarterback.
Right.
And if you're having a conversation about can Sexton be the guy and it's going on 3 years, guess what? He can't be the guy.
Yeah, well, I would agree with you. He's not going to be your number one guy. He might be your number one scorer, but I think that there's you can't. I don't know any time in history where a 6-foot shooting guard has been the number one option on a championship caliber team. And that's not to say Colin Sexton's not a good player. It's not to say he's not going to be an all-star someday. He could be. But at this point, you kind of need, and there is, and Joe Varden of The Athletic reported this, there is some friction there in terms of his distribution and all that. Whether it's fair or not, it's there. Fans will say, well, Varden's just searching for, no, Joe's not searching for anything. It's just there.
Yep.
And players on opposing teams. Again, when you're a fan and you're wearing those rose-colored glasses, I know when somebody says something like, hey, Baker, these couple receivers don't like Baker Mayfield, which obviously isn't true. That's totally hypothetical. But if somebody were to write that or say that, it would make me kind of mad that they're writing or saying it. But it's also true, so my job isn't to be, I wish it were. I wish my job was to do nothing but say great things about the team I cover. But my job, in my eyes, is to give fans an inside look at the team. And frankly, the inside look isn't always going to be what fans want. But, to me, it's neither here nor there. I've been doing this 14 years. The first 2 or 3 years when I saw like half the fan base upset with me, it would bother me. Now, I don't, first of all, I don't think half the fan base is upset with me. There's a few loud ones, but if all of them were, it wouldn't bother me. My number one priority is, doing the best job I can and being honest. And my second priority is making sure that direct deposit is there to cover the team. So, that's really what this job is about. I love basketball. I really do like the Cavs. I grew up rooting for them and was happy when they won a championship. But to me, things aren't bad with them. They're just not good. And it's not as good as they're trying to paint the picture. That's for sure.
Isaiah Thomas, the Pistons, he's 6'1", would be about the shortest, probably number one.
Yeah, sure. No. There's been guys that have had. Oh, you're talking about Isaiah Thomas, the original Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah, the OG Isaiah Thomas.
He would be the only one that actually won a championship when he was like the man.
Yeah. So the fan base divided over Sexton, but Sam, we are united over Kevin Love.
Well, I think everybody, I could write that the Cavs need to trade Kevin Love and I will get zero complaints.
Correct.
And I think that's, look, the Cavs know it. Kevin Love would love to be traded, but there's that contract and he will have to do something. He would have to be willing to do something for that to be an easy fix. Whether he takes somehow they could work out the contract so that he could be moved. Easier.
To make matters worse, as if his previous play up to tonight, as of Wednesday, May 12th, hasn't been bad enough. On Fan Appreciation Night, he has his best night of the season against the Celtics, propelling the Cavs to a win, all the while hurting our lottery chances, Sam.
Yeah. Well, right. Well, every once in a while, do you remember Shaq with the Cavs?
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, Shaq was clearly way past his prime when he came to the Cavs, but every once in a while, once every 2 or 3 months, he would have a game where you remembered why he was who he was, why he was a Hall of Famer, or is a Hall of Famer. You would remember, wow, there's Shaq. That's the Shaq. And tonight was Kevin Love's Shaq game. where it was like, oh yeah, remember he used to be able to do this on a nightly basis, and every once in a while those great, I shouldn't call Kevin Love great, but those former all-stars will remind you what made them an all-star. He had it, he just had it going tonight. He had it. He was feeling it, but like you said,
it's because he felt pressure because Wiggins has been playing well. He's like, oh crap, Wiggins has had a couple good games. I got to show up for one.
Well, there's a couple of guys they don't have that they once had that would be fantastic on this team. And Andrew Wiggins is probably my second pick after Kevin Porter Jr. But Kevin Love helped them win a title.
You do that Kevin Love trade for Andrew Wiggins every single time. That's worked out for the Cavs. The Cavs won that trade. I mean, it's hard now to say what, who would you look, you can't have both. I would still make that trade. Kevin Love is a major part of that championship team. And
and he was a big part of that. He was absolutely a big part of that Love. So, I'm just saying right now, today, they need a player like Wiggins. They could really use a guy like that, but the trade was worth it.
Need a lot. The Cavs prior to tonight they'd lost 11 straight, Sam. We'd asked about 3 weeks ago, are we going to start seeing the Cavs really just bottom out? And boy, they did not disappoint, Sam. It has been a rough couple weeks if you're a Cavs.
Have you ever noticed that teams that stink always have a ton of injuries at the end of the year?
We were wondering.
I mean, Orlando has a hardship exception. The Cavs got a hardship exception to get Andy.
I think there was a Cavs podcast that wondered if that was going to happen. I can't remember which one that was.
What's that?
I think there was a Cavs podcast that said that they were wondering if that was going to happen. I can't remember which one that was.
There was. It's probably like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I hate to question guys' injuries because again, it's just like when the player tells me that 80% of the team would welcome a trade, I may not believe the numbers that high, but I'm going to report it. And I'm not going to question it because it's somebody I trust. Well, I trust the Cleveland Cavaliers when they say these guys are injured. And I know Larry Nance Jr. is really injured. There's no doubt about that. Torian Prince is injured for sure. I'm not so sure about Chetty, but hey, they say he's injured. I believe it.
Yep. Yeah. The like we said, the Cavs have the previous going tonight. They no longer have the third best odds for the lottery. Sam, we have 2 games left. We're going to touch on that a little bit after the break. Do you see the Cavs being competitive? They play the Wizards and the Nets coming up. I mean, are they looking just to kind of we need to lose these last 2 games?
That's what the general manager's hoping, but the players aren't going to go out there to play to lose. But if you get that vibe from your GM, then sometimes you just look for your own numbers. But I mean, the Wizards are really, really, really playing for something. So the Wizards are going to probably cook them anyway. They would have beat them anyway. And the Nets, they may have a chance against the Nets depending on what. If Brooklyn, it's looking like Brooklyn's going to need to win that game to try to get the number 1 seed from Philly. But if that's already been determined, if Philly has already wrapped it up, then Brooklyn may they're not going to play any of their guys, and it'll be like a G League game with Colin Sexton.
The Cavs over under for the season was 21.5 wins. They hit the over tonight against the Celtics. The Rockets have secured the best odds for the lottery. They're 16-53 on this Wednesday night. And then the teams that are kind of hovering on that 21-22 win mark, we got the Thunder at 21 wins. We got the Timberwolves at 22 wins. That's in the West. In the East, the Pistons have 20 wins, the Magic have 21 wins, and the Cavs have 22 wins. Those are kind of like the 6 teams, Sam, all kind of gunning for really just a handful of players at the top of the draft. The Cavs were a couple games out of missing out on Luka. They just missed Zion. Sam, there's this pattern that we are just 1 or 2 spots away from these franchise generational players. I've got a bad feeling about this summer.
Well, I mean, it would be nice to get Cunningham or, obviously.
Is there another ball somewhere?
Well, I mean, you're going to have to, that's the thing. You're going to have to, a lot of these guys, Mobley from USC, are guards that are near the top of the draft. So you're going to have to do something if you end up with the number one pick. Now you're going to have Cade Cunningham, Sexton, and Garland, and Okoro, who's undersized for a small forward. You're going to have to figure that out. You can make it work. I think
slander Okoro's name like that. I won't have that on this podcast.
Hey, undersized is not a slander. It goes to show just how, the kid's versatile, and he's showing some versatility in terms of his ability to defend people. Now, he's not doing a great lockdown job yet, but you can definitely see those signs despite his size. And he's versatile in that he can guard a lot of different positions. So he's still learning the pro game, but I think he frankly looked better as a rookie than Garland looked as a rookie. And now you look at Garland now. So if Okoro can make that kind of leap, I think there's some definite promise with that, with those guys. I really do.
Yep. Well, hey, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to touch on Slate 20 and the last couple of games here this season. Stick around and we'll be right back.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. We read one book a month and then we talk about it. Books like Stephen King's The Shining or Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. If you're on the hunt for book recommendations and enjoy sparkling conversation, come read along with us and then listen in.
Want to hear more about your favorite TV shows and movies that are on countless streaming services?
Then listen to Up Next with your new favorite hosts, me, Kristen Aviles,
And me, Christina Walter.
Every other week we'll highlight one genre, but 2 movies or TV shows, one old and one new.
We'll let you know what's hot and what's not from your favorite
or least favorite
streaming services.
And be sure to stay tuned to the end of each episode where we shout out an artist whose name you should know for their talent in the industry.
So follow us to stay up to date with your favorite hosts from Up Next,
a part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Coming up on the next edition of the Reg Iron Rhoda podcast, thank God, Reg, the Cavaliers season is over. We'll recap what was yet another miserable year.
A post-mortem on, I don't know, I hope not, but what might be a 50-loss season and a 72-game shortened schedule. Kenny, something's got to give this offseason. I'm going to leave it right there.
I hear you loud and clear. We'll talk about that. And the Indians, maybe the tribe has a shot at this crazy, wacky American League Central Division. We'll talk about that and some Browns chatter as well on the next edition of the R&R podcast.
For the Dennis Maniloff Show, I'll tap into my 40-plus years of following Cleveland sports and 30-plus years of writing and talking about them, so as to bring you informed opinions and analysis of your favorite players and teams. I also will monitor the national sports scene and, when warranted, step out of the toy department and into the real world. And I'll always be on the lookout for special guests. By all means, join us.
Hi, my name's Jeremy Powell, co-host of the Oranges, Oranger Browns podcast. Check us out anywhere you listen to podcasts. For all your Browns coverage, post-game, pre-game, anything you need Browns, you'll find it here on the Oranges, Oranger Browns podcast.
Hey, it's Tito, host of the Premier Fantasy Podcast. Get all the news and analysis you need to dominate your fantasy league. I've been doing this as long as anybody in the business. I can help give you the edge in your leagues. It's the Premier Fantasy Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hi, my name is Sam Post, owner of Phenomenal CBD Store and PhenomenalCBD.com. That's like phenomenal, CBD.com. Tune in where we talk with experts about how the amazing hemp plant can make a difference for people's health and well-being from the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey, it's JD from the Hyman Podcast. I created this podcast to have hard conversations. Conversations that make us human but are also wildly uncomfortable. Conversations that help give voice to the voiceless and to the marginalized. Now you can listen to the entire first season on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Consider this your personal invitation to join the conversation.
All right, we are back here on Cavs on the Break, NBA podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network with Sam Amico. Sam, I want to go over a couple games here for the Cavs, talk about what worked, what didn't work, what did you like, what did you not like. The Cavs' current record right now is 22-48. We have won one game of our last 12. It's not looking good.
What have I liked?
The NBA draft lottery is June 22nd, so about almost a month away. The lottery is July 29th. Put those in your calendar. Don't miss that. Sam, we've lost a lot of games and they really haven't been close.
Yeah.
What has there been to like?
Well, not a whole lot. Okoro had a couple of games in there that were impressive. It's so hard to judge at this time of year too, because the players are human. And I don't just mean the Cavs. I mean, the players on the other team kind of look at it like, you could tell kind of like Indiana was kind of loafing for almost the full 4 quarters. And then they really turned it on when it was like winning time. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to judge when a team is in the situation where the Cavs are. I think what's disappointing, obviously the injuries are a huge disappointment, but what's disappointing is they played with such resolve at the start of the year. When they kind of built momentum off of last season, which was so far away because of COVID. They didn't play it since early March. And then all of a sudden you have this super long break for them to start the season late December, really almost January. And they were still able to build some momentum off that finish, going 5-6 last year at the end of 2019-20.
Yep.
And then they started off hot. They looked competitive.
So much promise.
Yeah. They look like a team with fire and resolve. And frankly, I know people don't want to admit this, but I think it's more than just a coincidence that once they decided to bench Drummond and look for a resolution, whether it was a trade or a buyout, I don't think anybody on the team would have been that disappointed had they decided to buy him out, but let him play up until then.
Yeah.
And I think players around the league, I can tell you, all to a man, everyone I've talked to, or agents or former coaches or anybody I've talked to around the league, just thought, why did they bench him?
Yep. That definitely seemed to be a linchpin in the season where
it was a turning point. Now, I don't know that the rest of the Cavs were, I can't speak for them, but it seemed to me that they were not in favor of that. And they thought they did Andre dirty by sitting him, and it altered it. That's when things change. So I don't know, but to me, that's kind of where things, the good feelings kind of went away at that point.
Well, this isn't going to be fun. Let's go over the last couple of weeks, Sam, of games. Tuesday, May 4th, Cavs lost in overtime to the Suns at the Rock, 134-118. Wednesday, May 5th, my birthday, the Cavs didn't care. They got crushed at home against the Trailblazers, 141-105. How's that for a birthday, Chase? You get
happy birthday, Chase. You get a 36-point loss.
40 spot right there. Boom. Not even close. Friday, May 7th, Cavs lost to the Mavs in Dallas, 110-90. Sunday, they lost again to the Cavs at the Rock, this time 124-97. Was that the second game? Was the one that Luka got ejected, right?
Yeah, and they still clean their clocks. Yep.
Yeah. Monday the 10th, Cavs lost to the Pacers at the Rock, 111-102. And tonight, the Celtics. Hey, Sam, at least we're not the Celtics.
I'll tell you what, I thought that tonight too, after the Cavs beat them. I think it was the second straight time. I know they beat them twice, both at home this year. And both times I just thought, boy, the Celtics to me, with Jaylen Brown out, look like a team that's going to get swept in the first round of the playoffs. May make a coaching change.
Unbelievable.
They seem to love Danny Ainge there. But the wheels have really come off in Boston. I mean, they had high expectations this year.
You know what's fascinating? LeBron has killed 2 entire franchise cycles of the Celtics. LeBron has stopped them both from reaching the promised land. I mean, that year where they took the Cavs to 7, that was their best shot.
Yeah, that was a great shot for them.
And LeBron, as a Cavalier, stopped it. And it's just, he
stopped the Garnett and Ray Allen thing with with the Heat before that. Yep. So,
and not to be
I'm sorry, Garnett and Paul Pierce. Ray Allen was only there for a year or two.
Not to turn into a pro LeBron pod, which I would love to, because I think he's just amazing at basketball. It's just to think of all the promise they had, all the assets, all the young core. They had the coach, they had the players, they had, and they have nothing to show for it. Absolutely nothing. Sam.
I think they need to move on from Brown and Tatum together. I think that those guys are both great individual players, but they're too similar. And I think that they need to make some changes. And I think they realize that. I think everything I'm hearing, they realize that, and they're going to move one of them. Would be nice to have Jason Tatum in Cleveland.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, Sexton, I think Tatum is a higher ceiling than Brown. So I don't know if I would keep Tatum.
Well, yeah. I mean, but keep in mind, there'll probably be like 28 other teams that'll be vying for him, 27 somewhere in there.
Would you do Sexton and a top 5 for Jaylen Brown?
Boy, the Celtics would want your pick now.
Right. Yeah.
They want it now because they wouldn't want it if it fell like 5th. I don't know. They've got to make some changes. If I'm the Celtics, I don't think I'd do that. But if I didn't get a better offer, I probably would. I mean,
just hypothetical. Yeah. I mean,
I don't know. If I'm the Cavs, boy, I don't know. I guess you'd have to, if you think Jason Tatum's going to solve, he's a nice young player. He's young. It's not like you're talking it seems like he's been in the league for a long time, but he's still.
I would be surprised if the Celtics pick Brown over Tatum. I think Tatum is the clear piece you build around.
I think Sexton and Jaylen Brown and say Suggs or Mobley would be a step back for them. They would be kind of in a, we need, because they all of a sudden they'd be really young again, and I don't know. But I do think that that Boston's going to move one of those two guys this offseason.
Well, Sexton would, I think, come off the bench in place of. They would move him anyway. We're not. That's a silly hypothetical. We did a whole podcast on Ben Simmons as a Cap, so we could definitely spend some time here, Sam. We have 2 more games here to end the season. Friday, we travel to DC to play Russ and the Wiz, who are just playing out of their skulls right now.
I love that team. Yeah. I love watch. Nobody else cares about them, but I love watching those guys. I love watching Westbrook and Beal. Have been. I'm a huge Bradley Beal guy. I love watching him play.
I'm a Russ fan as well, doing things that we're never going to see in the league. When he got the triple-double, the 2020 triple-double a couple years ago, you can't even do that in 2K, Sam. I mean, these are just things that people don't like because of the style that he plays, but
he plays one speed though. I mean, if you like Colin Sexton, you better like Russell Westbrook because they're the same kind of guy.
Don't tell Kevin Love that. You can't.
Well, I mean, in terms of knowing one speed.
You cannot say that, Sam. All right. And then we end the season Sunday, May 16th at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn against the Nets. Sam, we aren't going to win another game, and we're going to go into the offseason with a ton of questions.
That's fine. They shouldn't win another game.
And hopefully the only answer they know is that they need to move on from Colin Sexton.
Well, I'm not going to say that. I think that they need to reevaluate some things and decide, if you're going to, if Sexton and Garland are your backcourt for sure from the future, then you need to find some spot up shooting somewhere. I don't think they need to end that experiment, but you better get a really good either wing player, and I mean, a Kawhi Leonard or a Giannis. You need one of those kind of wing players, and you better make sure that these things that have been reported, that I didn't report them, but that I've read, that other players and the Cavs are not real pleased about, Colin Sexton taking so much time with the basketball. You better make sure those things aren't true.
Yeah.
Because if they are, it may not even be his fault. But if they're true, then you've got to really, you're all about culture, right? Or so you say. Then you've got to do what you got to do for your culture.
I think
I don't know that
Sexton's
they're
stock
true.
is low.
What's that?
I think Sexton's stock is low. And I think when you look at
I will tell you this, if talking to other GMs, it is kind of low. One GM said, well, somebody's got to score on a bad team.
Yep.
But I and people look at that like I'm taking a shot at Sexton. I love the guy personally. I really do.
Yeah, I love his heart. We're just looking at strictly as building a team. I think
you know what? Maybe the hope is that in 5 years that they, less than 5 years. I'm getting old. But the hope is that within a couple years, the Garland Sexton backcourt will be their backcourt and they're winning. And we're not just hearing, well, that's, they've got promise, because I'll tell you what, you hear that every year out of some teams, and the Cavs don't want to be one of those teams.
Yeah.
You don't want to constantly say we've got promise, because guess what? Then you guys who you're developing end up leaving the first opportunity they get, because all you're doing is keep telling everybody you have promise. You think De'Aaron Fox is long for Sacramento? If this keeps up, he's going to get out of there the very first chance he can. So
bounced real quick.
Yeah, what a great guy, because he likes my posts. So I hope he goes somewhere where he's happy.
Come to Cleveland, buddy.
He's
Come
something else.
Hey, well, Sam, we're going to come back next week. We're going to wrap the season up, have some special guests, hopefully, and put a little bow on this poo-poo platter of a season that the Cavs have presented to us. And, hey, we're not going anywhere. We love the Cavs. We love the team, love the city. And we're frustrated because it just feels like we're treading water. And we see potential, we see promise. We've seen the team play at a high caliber, and it seems like we get in our own way, and that's frustrating.
Yeah, Chase, and I will say this: the one thing I know, again, is that every team that's not making the playoffs, every one of them has just as strong of a case right now as the Cavs that we're going to be good in 3 years. Sure. The Detroit Pistons have 4 pretty good rookies. And they're going back to lottery. Maybe they'll get Cade Cunningham. Maybe. Then they'll have 4 really good second-year players and Cade Cunningham. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, every team's in that same boat. Everybody says we have a nice young core. Heck, the Pistons even call theirs the core 4. So, every team uses that marketing slogan and sells that to their fans. And maybe the Cavs do have a nice young core. But guess what? So does everybody else in the boat. Maybe not Oklahoma City, but everybody else does. And, so are you further along than them? And I don't know that the Cavs are. I don't know that they're further along than those other teams that are making the same claim.
Well, that does it for this episode of Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Thank you all so much for downloading and listening. Shouts to our presenting sponsor, Aligned Health Center. Shouts to Press Play Podcast for making this possible. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Cavs on the Break. We always follow back. Follow Sam on Twitter at Amico Hoops. Catch all of his work and writings at 48minutes.com and nowkick.com for breaking news, insider info. Do not miss out. Sam, any final thoughts, brother?
No, I look forward next week to talking about the off season and be fun. Hang in there, Cavs fans. It'll get better, I think.
I agree, Sam. Hey, it's always great talking to you. Talk to you next week. Mike Breen, take us out.
Congratulations, Cleveland. Your decades-long wait is finally over. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.